I'm going to tweet it out. And then we'll get started. Awesome. Yeah, really been looking forward to this one. We are live now. We're on YouTube, primarily Twitter and Twitch, and probably get some viewers who come in and watch afterwards on YouTube. But I'm live with Drew Kaufman. Drew, GM.
All right, hello. Good to be here. Thanks for having me on this and having a nice, wide-ranging discussions about nouns. I talk about nouns with all of my IRL friends, and it's incessantly. So this will hopefully be like a good outlet for the day at least.
Awesome. Yeah. I'd love to talk to you about nouns. Want to start though more about yourself.
Sure.
And let me pull up. I first came across you with your Explorer grant, so I'm going to try and sort of pull that up. How did you hear of nouns?
Great question. Yeah, so I have been in the Web3 space for, not a particularly long time, starting in the beginning of 2021, really, as I started having friends who were exploring NFTs. And then kind of what I would describe as like my primary home in Web3 became FWB, which is a social DAO that has this really great Discord of people from all different backgrounds, but many creatives. And there's an entire channel in there dedicated to NFTs, tons of people trying to think through what the future of NFTs look like from a very art forward way. And it was probably there that I saw a link to nouns at the beginning. And, it's one of those interesting things where I've been watching it this entire time. I've tried to dive in a few, there's been a few moments where I've been like, I'd really love to explore this further. But it just has been one of those communities that I've sort of observed and admired from afar, but not really, I never found the time or the space or the right community to like really understand it and dive in deeper. And this Explorer grant gave me the perfect opportunity to do so.
Yeah, definitely. I love how you identify yourself here, by the way.
Oh,
This really
thanks.
sticks out to me because I would say not many people identify as a writer and an artist or creator and a growth marketer. But I've seen you do all these things, and you really are these things. Um, yeah. Let's talk briefly sort of about this Explore grant. So you got a 10 ETH for 2 months for a grant to explore the Nouns ecosystem. Yeah.
Yep, that's right. And yeah, it's a really cool opportunity where, one of the things that I've really enjoyed doing over my time learning about Web3 is trying to take a lot of the concepts that I find really interesting and explain it to like a wider world who probably doesn't have the knowledge or understanding or, personal depth into Web3 or NFTs or whatever. And sometimes, the goal of that is to onboard people and say, hey, come join this or take this opportunity. But I think other times it's just really worthwhile to share what's happening because the overwhelming perception around Web3 is negative. And being able to explain something like nouns, which is positive, it's not, it doesn't require things of the people who are writing proposals. It's so artist forward in so many ways, just feels like a really cool way to explain that this space that we all care about isn't as scammy as I think a lot of people think it is.
Yep. Um, yeah. So, tell us about your little noun. You were repped here by what is?
Yeah, the little beat head with the noggles on, or at least noggle sunglasses on. Yeah, this was something that came through FWB actually. Is there's a few people in the FWB community that have been really bullish on nouns, but don't have the capital to bid on and buy a noun proper. And the noggles were, or sorry, the little nouns is, a very cool example of a way to on ramp into the nouns community with a much smaller stake. And I was talking with people. I think I put a few bids in and didn't win any. And then a friend of mine named Yuri just literally sent this one to my wallet and said, "I want you to get more involved." So very thankful to Yuri for giving me this little noun. And I'll be fully honest. Like I got it. I joined the Little Nouns community, the Discord. I started participating a little bit. I started telling that community about my perception. And no disrespect to Little Nouns whatsoever. I think it's amazing, and I think it's continuing to build into something even better. But for whatever reason, I sort of bounced off of it. I think that I'm so specifically interested in the components of nouns that are more about the artist side of things and the funding side of things, funding art. And when I joined Little Nouns, it was very specifically about more of the dev side, the hey, we're trying to build this out. We're building this out into something. We need builders that can do that kind of thing, which has never been my role. And it's really been cool to see, even in this past month, the branding and the messaging from Little Nouns transitioning a little bit away from what it used to be to, I've heard somebody from the Little Nouns community say like the goal is like a Little Nouns proposal is almost like a test round for a Nouns proper proposal. And that kind of stuff is very, very cool. And I'd love to explore that further and, kind of share those ideas and explorations with the community.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, full disclosure, I'm a big little noun. I'm a little panda.
That's right.
So yeah, I definitely participate. Little nounish stuff, and yeah, there's definitely a lot of different views about what it is, what it can be. For sure. Let's see if we can get kind of stick with you for a minute, and then kind of go wider on nouns later.
Yeah,
Because I
please.
really want to kind of understand your background, what brings you here. This is your personal website.
That's right.
I love this. Can you tell me about this green color? Did you choose
Yeah.
this? Or?
Yeah, totally down to say that. Yeah, I've never necessarily had like a favorite color personally, but in another lifetime, which was only about 5 years ago, but was before I discovered Web3, I ran a coffee shop. And my wife and I built a coffee shop from scratch in Northern California, and we called it Evergreen. And the coffee shop still exists. I no longer run it. I passed it off. But because I called a business Evergreen, I started loving the color green and choosing it as, my sort of personal brand color. But there wasn't, there's not much more explanation to it than that. And when I was creating a personal site, it just felt right. There's also something about this specific shade of green that, you're referencing right now, which feels a little like 90s aesthetic, 90s internet aesthetic, like combined with more of a typewriter-y font. It just feels a little reminiscent of that phase of computing, which always was like an extremely optimistic time that I think I have a lot of love for and try to remember. So yeah, that's the green, and yeah, this is my site where I've just kind of been, exploring over the last few years, publishing small articles and trying to create a little running list of the things that I've been working on.
I love I love evergreen. I love that explanation.
Yeah, it's very fun. Good coffee shop. If you're ever in Redding, California, northern on the Oregon border, come through. It's a great coffee shop. They'll make you a very good cup of coffee.
Cool. Yeah. Yeah, I remember looking at your Explorer grant, somehow clicking over to here and just seeing like an interesting way that you talk about yourself, and the things you've done. Just I love the active verbs and kind of a resume style thing.
Totally. Yeah.
Contributed, fostering. How yeah, I don't know. I just kind of want to make that observation. Um yeah. Did you design this website, or do you have a designer, or what's?
This is a website built on the platform Cargo, which is a very aesthetically pleasing personal website creator, blog creator. So I'm not sure exactly how much of this was a template that I just straight up grabbed and how much of it I changed. Certainly the color I am responsible for and the sort of weird dot matrixy vibe of the images. But yeah, I would love to eventually have a website that felt on chain. I actually just saw a like personal website creator that's trying to decentralize the process. But for now, this works just fine. And I'm happy to keep paying a bill to a centralized service to give me a good spot on the internet.
It looks great. I gotta say,
Thanks.
it's a really beautiful website.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's see what else do we have here. Can we jump over to Disney? Want to talk about
Please.
Disney?
Yeah.
I've seen your video a couple times. Could you give and sort of let's maybe plug that? So, what's the best way for someone to find this video? It'd be probably
It's pinned on my Twitter account right now, and it's available on chain on Zora as like an open edition for a very cheap amount. But it's also on YouTube, so you can find me basically anywhere. Just my name, Drew Kaufman, all one word, on YouTube or on Twitter to find this thing.
Yeah. And so, yeah, I like the way you described yourself at the start here, as you said, kind of what interests you in nouns is sort of the artist and funding side more than sort of the dev side. So why did you make this video comparing sort of Disney to nouns or sort of?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. So one of the things that stuck out to me about nouns as I started learning more about it is this virtuous cycle or flywheel that's often touted of, this example of the minting a noun's NFT gives money to the treasury. That treasury funds art. That art proliferates nouns and makes the brand more powerful. That power translates to more valuable NFTs, more valuable branding, and then that value goes to the treasury, on and on and on and on. And whenever I think about any sort of flywheel or cycle, I think about Disney's, because Disney did it right, like they're still here so long after they were founded and feel just as strong, if not stronger, than the previous eras that came before. And Disney himself created this really interesting map of the interconnected nature of everything that he wanted to do, because what made the Disney brand so strong wasn't just we're going to make movies or we're going to make a theme park or we're going to make comic books. It was we're going to do all of those things. And every single thing that we do is going to be interconnected and help build out the larger story that is Disney. So there's all these arrows on this very intricate map that show that example. A film might lead people to want to explore Disneyland where those characters exist. Those characters existing at Disneyland might make people want to go learn more about them via a comic or a magazine or maybe even a soundtrack. And buying that soundtrack is going to make them remember the movie and want to watch the movie again. And it can just go on and on and on in all of these different directions. And, even though this map was published in the 50s, I believe, or maybe, I think it was like the 50s, they're still doing it. You can replace the mice, the Mickey Mouse characters that are running all over this with Avengers and see that they're still playing this map out with Marvel characters, with Star Wars characters, and everyone who's trying to build out these cinematic universes, which kind of became the standard way of making films over the last 10, 20 years, is following this playbook. But it's centralized, there's no way for me as a Disney enthusiast to profit off of this or make, something that's interconnected with this and be paid. The way that this works is by Disney employing thousands, tens of thousands, who knows how many employees, and making this incredibly interconnected machine run. And even though it's successful, there's issues with this concept, and there's a limit to how well it can be, how well it can be done. I mean, that's happening with Marvel right now. I am not a Marvel head. I know plenty of people are, but from what I understand, people are relatively dissatisfied with the state of the Marvel universe right now, where so many movies are coming out, so many television shows are coming out, so many stories are happening, and they don't always hit. And you have to keep watching them. You have to make sure that you're caught up before you can enjoy the next one. And there's just this fatigue that's being built there. And they're not really able to take that feedback in real time because of the centralized nature and how films work and how these plans are created. And what I love about Nouns is, it's a much simpler concept of all of these proposals constantly flowing in from the outside, not from a centralized space, but being funded by this decentralized manner, and allowing the community to say yes or no to things. That's just an incredibly different concept that has its own benefits and own flaws. But to me, it feels more futuristic or future oriented than what we see with this Disney map. Does that make sense?
Yeah, totally. So, it makes sense because I've watched your video and yeah, spent some time thinking about it. I hope it makes sense to viewers. But if not, go right now and look at Drew's video. It's a beautiful video. You can see his man. I'm really jealous of your desk setup, by the way. I'm from California, and it just feels fresh in your video.
Nice. Yeah, I'm working on it. I just got a standing desk because I'm spending more and more time in my home as time goes on. So yeah, happy to have a setup that I enjoy walking over to every day.
Okay, so yeah, go watch that video if you're not with us so far. If you are with us, I want to zoom in here a bit. And look, can we just talk through an example? Like, I don't know, I grew up with The Lion King, say.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I mean that's a great example, right? Like, just looking at this in the way that this map plays out, even though it was in the 1950s, the playbook is identical for Lion King. So, they released this film, and then as you can see over to the right, that provides article material for Walt Disney Magazine in the bottom right corner. And I grew up with that. It wasn't called Walt Disney Magazine anymore. Disney Adventure, that's what it was called. And every month I would get a Disney Adventure magazine delivered to my door, and it would have the characters from the movies in that. And then Walt Disney Magazine or Disney Adventure, the one that I grew up with, would plug Disneyland. And there were plenty of opportunities and advertisements, not, necessarily stating themselves to be advertisements, that were saying how great Disneyland was. Is there actually a Lion King? Is there any Lion King rides at Disneyland or Disney World? I'm not sure if there is, but certainly, there's merch and all that kind of stuff at Disneyland that you would want to buy. Which leads us to the left-hand side. Disneyland provides sales via merchandise licensing. Let's see where merchandise licensing goes. Oh, it goes right back. Exploits films, which I don't know if we would want to use the word exploit anymore. But the merchandising is dependent on the films that are being made to make that merchandise interesting and accessible. So, we just kind of took a nice little loop from A to B to C back to A, and we could continue going on. I mean, we didn't cover music, which Lion King songs are still stuck in my head after all these years. We didn't cover television, which I know there's been like 2 or 3 different television shows based on the Lion King, Lion Pride or something like that. That doesn't cover the sequels and the remake. Disney didn't have the ability to think about the idea of remakes at the time, but he has reissues right there in the center. So yeah, that's a really interesting example of this playbook that was written 70 years ago, still being extremely relevant in the 90s and extremely relevant today.
Yep. Okay. So sticking in here, on this kind of chart here, we have these arrows that sort of show the direction of the relationships, and then we have these kind of rectangles or boxes. How would you describe, like, how would you characterize these boxes? Like,
the boxes are, the categories of media or medium that Disney has at its availability. So Disneyland is a medium for storytelling. Films are a medium for storytelling. Publications are a medium for storytelling. Merchandise even is a medium for storytelling. But because this is a very capitalist storytelling environment, there are also mediums for profit. None of these are being done out of the goodness of Disney's heart. They're being done to make more money. And the difference between releasing Lion King, calling it a day, and never capitalizing on that brand is, that Disney is able to continuously capitalize on the characters that they create and the stories that they tell by making the consumers, the users, buy as many versions of those stories and characters as possible. So, that for me, it was Aladdin growing up. For whatever reason, that story really captivated me. And I had the Aladdin VHS tape. I went and saw it in theaters. I was excited when the new movies were coming out. I had the merchandise. I had this genie lamp that I kept on a shelf in my room, and I was so excited about the idea of a genie coming out one day. I think I had some Aladdin comic books or something like that. I was always excited when I would see any of the Aladdin characters on Disney Magazine. I'm pretty sure I had a cassette tape of the music from Aladdin. So, that's me as somebody who loved that character and story, constantly coming back to Disney and buying more and more and more and more. And right now, I think that like the best example of that for modern Disney is like Grogu from the Star Wars Mandalorian TV series. I have a kid in my life that loves that character and has a little Grogu doll and has a little Grogu shirt and was excited when the Mandalorian came back on recently to watch it more. So they have a Disney Plus subscription. And, the more opportunities that Disney has to create Grogu slash Baby Yoda things to buy, that little kid will keep coming back again and again and again.
Yep. Okay. So I wasn't totally satisfied with kind of how what you called these, and I think it's because I struggle myself. But they're sort of like businesses themselves. Like Disneyland is a business, but you're right
For
that it's
sure.
also like a place where people go, or like a publication. Um, but yeah, if you think of any other better words to add to this, let's kind of come back to that if we can, because I think
Yeah,
if we were
sure. That's an interesting question to think through really what these are from the perspective of Disney, the company.
right, right, because there's also, so basically on this chart there's arrows and there's these properties or medias or whatever we want to call them. And then at the end of the day, sort of the implicit thing here is like there's one big arrow that goes to Disney, right? From everything, basically, you sort of alluded to this, but everything on this chart here, the profits at the end of the day, they all go down to some form of Disney.
Exactly. Correct.
Right. Okay. Awesome. So I think that's sort of one of the big differences that I want to kind of hammer home, or kind of explore, is what happens sort of with this off-screen arrow on the nouns model. But that's where we're not quite there yet. Is there anything else you want to say, by the way, about this before we move to nouns?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I think that the thing that's curious as we move into that conversation is, whatever we want to call these properties, mediums, tools, categories, it's very interesting to think about, what those are in a decentralized space. What tools are in the tool belt of the brand nouns and the creators interested in creating for nouns that would be the parallels to this Disney chart. And I don't have the answer to that necessarily specifically, but it's been something I've been thinking about since I made this video.
Haha, me too, sir. Me too. All right. I gotta add this though. The words here with arrows, what are we calling these words? Like these are kind of what are
Yeah,
they?
that's a good question. To me, yeah, that's actually, I don't have an answer. I think to me it's like the flow, like gets you from one space to another, but that's not quite an all-encompassing term here. I think that there's definitely probably a better way to describe it.
It's sort of like relationships, right? It sort of describes the
Totally.
relationship. Let's come back to that. I think we both agree that these are arrows. That's
Yes.
obvious. Categories, the verbs and stuff, not as obvious to me. Okay, so here's what I've got: is side by side. I've got this nouns thing. We'll come to this kind of at the end. This arrow and the decentralized. But if I were to fill this in for nouns, or if the two of us were together, um, what's like one of the? Let's start with a category that's kind of easy, maybe.
Sure.
Um,
One that's easy to me is NFTs, but that might be too specific. Maybe
no,
it's like,
I was thinking exactly the same
yeah,
thing.
yeah.
Do we want to put that in the middle, or where do we want to put
Yeah,
NFT?
it's almost like, well, I guess the question to me is there's a distinction between the nouns NFTs themselves and in, let's say, an open edition NFT that comes out of the ecosystem. So I think what goes in the middle is the nouns NFTs, the specific purchasing of a noun or a little noun or whatever else it might be.
Right, and that's where this conversation gets so interesting, right?
Right.
Because is Lil Nouns like another property
I think
here?
it is. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that's totally where I'm thinking as well.
And yeah, it's funny. I had the same inclination is the canonical noun NFTs, of which there are, 600 and
Right.
however many there are. I think those, yeah, there's six. Oh, interesting. Have you seen today's?
635. Oh, it's a
Have you,
mouse.
have you
Perfect.
seen
Perfect
today's noun?
timing.
Yeah, we got to put this one here. All right. So 635. And, we might have to shift these around, but let's start with the noun NFTs at the middle. Okay. All right. So where should we go to next?
One of the things that I am the most interested in right now is these well, there's I guess a few different situations that we can go here. Obviously, I'm thinking in real time, but I see a direct relationship between the nouns NFTs and the droposals that have been created recently as a really interesting flow from one space to the next.
All right, why don't we pick a specific one?
Sure.
Um,
The one by ordinary folk, the this is nouns, or yeah, the wizards. What is that called? I forget the name of it. That one's also great.
yeah, sorry, I just the wizard one is on my.
Wizard's hat. That's what I was looking for.
Is it the wizard's hat?
Yeah.
Harriet. Yes. Yeah, Harriet could have probably her own little thing here. All right, but let's see where should we put this one? I guess it doesn't matter too much.
Yeah. Yeah. Anywhere will do.
I'm having a Figma issue here.
As a non-Figma user, I'm merely impressed with how fast you move things around on the screen.
And I'll tell you, it took me a long time.
That's why I don't know how to use it. It took me a long time to learn Photoshop, and I'm sticking with it.
Rectangle. Text box. Come on. Here we go. Look at this. See, I just want to do that and that. And then it gets me this, which I don't want. Oh, here. Okay, I fixed it. There we go.
Incredible.
All right. We're in business. So, okay. So let's say, yeah, it doesn't matter. And
yeah, stick it over publications for sure. Why not?
Publications. Yeah, because, yeah. And that could be the whole comics thing. But, okay, let's do that for now. Let's put this down here. And so, yeah, talk me through what's the relationship between this wizard's droposal and the nouns NFTs.
Yeah, sure. So the kind of words that the Disney map uses are interesting to me. Plugs, feeds, provides, keeps, helps, sources. And so, really, if we think about it, the flow from the nouns NFT out is very similar in those dynamics. So, the nouns NFTs, we could really draw a bunch of arrows from that to the drop puzzle because it's providing characters, it's providing an audience, it's providing funding, it's doing so many different things. But I think that one of them that's very important, this a central concept from my perspective between the two is that this is where the characters are coming from. So as opposed to the Disney ecosystem, where characters are typically built out of films, the fact that the characters from the Wizard's Hat are being built out of the nouns NFTs themselves in a decentralized manner is very fascinating.
You know what? I think Harriet is a noun, right? The wizard's
Yeah,
hat.
yeah, that's what I mean. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so I'm getting kind of fearful here because I feel like I'm going to have 100 arrows.
Yeah, yes, that's certainly the truth. Yeah, it would be a fun exercise in the manner of Disney to just have a big, gigantic whiteboard or wall and just really storyboard out every single, little transition that you can possibly see.
Let's do that.
Hey, why not?
Okay, so I've got right now 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 7 arrows going from nouns NFT to wizard's hat.
Sure.
And let's just put everything here. One is the nouns NFT gave the character.
For sure. Yep.
What do
and sorry, say that one more time.
Created character or
or provides. To me, it's providing characters, right? Like the fact that the nouns NFTs exist is creating characters that can be used in the stories that are being told, like the Wizard's Hat.
Okay. What else?
And then I would feed an arrow in the opposite direction, and I would say that the Wizard's Hat is providing the nouns NFTs stories, because now this wizard character that had no real story or background or lore has provided that.
Okay, we're gonna have to go to that side later, I think. Otherwise,
sure.
I'm gonna struggle.
Ooh, backward text.
Yeah, see, I already messed it up. But let's
Sure. If we want to continue talking about the way that nouns are feeding into the Wizard's Hat droposal, then I would say that it provides funding. Yeah, because these NFTs are building out a treasury. That funding is coming from the nouns NFTs and being sent over to the droposal. And you are exactly right again. Nailed it on both counts that I was about to bring up. The audience, which is the community that is nouns NFTs, and then the distribution that is the nouns NFT official domain, or whatever it is that we're saying makes the idea of a droposal feel more official than if the Wizard's Hat was just minted from some random account.
Yep. Okay, what else do we got here?
That's a good question. I mean, those all feel pretty meaty to me, but if we wanted to continue going forward, I would say, I don't know. I would actually say the world that's being built or the story that's being built comes from Wizard's Hat as opposed to nouns. So I wouldn't say that arrow goes in this direction. I think that might be it for me in terms of what's coming from nouns. Yeah.
Okay, so we can always come back later. But okay, so I'm going to make this on this side here.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I was just going to say, to be annoying, I would say that these arrows all need to be flipped, which you're reading my mind. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So yeah, it builds the world, it builds the lore of what the nouns NFTs are. It provides funding, which is great because we have provides funding on the other side as well. But there's a reciprocity here where they're both providing funding in a really interesting way to each other.
And you know what? I'm going to make an executive decision and
Yeah,
just
do it.
cut this down to ETH.
I love it. Yeah, ETH flows from one spot to another for sure. And then let's see, what else do we have? What else does the nouns proposal provide? Do you think that I think it might provide um, a, a new audience or an outside audience? Because the Wizard's hat is probably likely to bring in people that aren't, necessarily Web3 heads that are interested in checking nouns.wtf every day.
100%.
Anything else that you could think of off the top of your head?
There is a lot more. We got to get it down. Let's see. Builds a story world and lore. ETH builds the community and audience. There's maybe legitimacy is more of kind of a crypto word, and it's maybe not the right word, but when you have serious artists who want to use
Yeah,
nouns,
yeah,
it builds what is it, credibility,
yeah, for sure.
attention. What do you think?
Yeah, I think credibility is an interesting word. I was just thinking about that. I mentioned it in my Explorers grant, but the fact that Dustin Yellen is creating a work of art feels like a true credibility add to the nouns ecosystem. And a film would do the same thing.
Yeah. I would say the other thing is it really builds the brand. I mean, it's really what it is it's a funnel to the NFTs. And I'm thinking about this because I spoke with David Horvath last week, and he's hammering on about how what's interesting about nouns is the character is just sort of the start. Like when you first see a noun or interact with a noun, it's just the start of your relationship. It's not like
Hmm.
the end. It's more of a beginning. And I think of, someone, I'm sure there's been someone who's seen this Wizard's Hat film, which is fantastic. You should all look at it. I think Jared Prince or Jared Price. I'll try and get a link in the description. But I'm sure there are people who've seen that who had no idea what the nouns are, and they kind of got funneled to eventually kind of look into the nouns. Does that make sense?
Sorry, I lost the tab. I keep forgetting which tab is this conversation as I was going and looking at the Wizard's Hat drop page. But yes, I totally agree with that. Yeah, for sure.
And then what's interesting is, and this is a fun kind of comparison, right? Is because I'm saying there's ETH going this way and there's ETH going that way. We can actually know exactly what that is, right?
You mean the amount?
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
So let's go here and let's track this down. I'm doing this for a reason, I promise. Okay, so there's Prop 236, and then, geez, the original one was way back when. Is it this one? Noun Stories? Yes, look at this.
Nice, nailed it.
Shark DAO, man. Anytime you see Shark DAO, follow
Yeah,
that thread.
yeah, they know what
Okay.
they're doing.
So yeah, nouns. Look, nouns passed this 47-0. This was a year and 2 months ago, January 2022, and it was 21, 27, 28 ETH. Let's say 28 ETH. Okay. You with me so far?
Yeah, for sure. The initial fund from Nouns NFTs to the Wizard's Hat was 2080.
Okay. So let's now go and look at this Wizard's Hat NFT. You don't happen to have the link to that, do you?
I do. I'm just dropping it in the chat right now.
Oh, awesome. Awesome. Okay. So here was the NFT 2320 minted at 0.058 each.
That's 116. 116 ETH.
And you're a wizard, sir.
And then there's a split that was proposed in that proposal, right? For the This Is Nouns, it was 60-40. For Wizards Hat, I want to say it was 50-50, but I might be totally wrong.
I think 50-50 is right. So okay. Now again, we're going to get complicated, and I'm going to have you help me save me here. Back to Figma we go. Right here.
That's 58 ETH for both parties.
Well, let's start with the 116. Where's
Sure.
the 116 ETH on this?
Well,
It's
neither. That's what I'm
this.
saying, right? Because it's flowing in both directions. So really, 28 plus, what did I just say? 58? Yeah, 28 plus 58 is 86 ETH going in the direction from Nouns NFTs to the Wizard's Hat Droposal. And then 58 ETH is going from the Wizard's Hat Droposal to Nouns NFTs. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So 58 ETH goes from the Wizard's Hat
to Nouns NFTs. And then 86 goes from Nouns to the Wizard's Hat Droposal.
Let's do those on separate lines, though.
Sure, totally. Yeah, that's fine. So it's 58.
So 58 here. Okay.
Yeah, man, it's really interesting because my inclination is to try and summarize, but it really shows how complicated and complex this decentralized thing can be when you really highlight that each of these is opportunity and method for one thing to go from one category or tool or whatever we're going to call these to another.
Yeah, and you know what? I'm not satisfied with our accounting yet.
I appreciate that.
So let's look at Nouns NFTs. So they are out 28 ETH, right? That they paid to fund it.
True.
And then Nouns is plus 58 ETH. Is that right?
Yes, you make a great point.
So then what's the total here? This is going to be like 30. Right? Yeah. This is kind of the net.
Total.
All right. Okay.
And this isn't accounting secondary sales, but that's harder to estimate on the fly.
Totally. And I wonder if there's a royalty on these. My guess is there probably is not, but I could be wrong. Yeah, the accounting, when you really look into it, though, it's kind of interesting because this is like a great investment for Nouns. They spent 28 ETH. They get, community, credibility. They get funneling to the NFTs. They get this whole story world and lore, and they make 30 ETH. They also get, they get all these assets.
Right.
And what do we want to call these? Content. And it's almost like if we go back to this Disney thing, right? Where are the DVD resales, or the streaming content? Once you create Lion King, you have this asset that you can sell to a streamer, or in the case of Disney, make your own streamer and sell it direct to consumer.
Yeah, I think, it's hard for me to think about how to convey this specifically, but it feels like one of the major differentiations between the Disney strategy and the Noun strategy is there's never a spot really in the Disney ecosystem where the idea of a character is generated, but the story of the character isn't generated. And the fact that Nouns is saying, here's this wizard, we go nuts. Like, we have nothing else to say about this wizard other than the fact that it's got a cool hat is really interesting because it allows people to explore what that can be from any perspective. It would be as if, in my opinion, you would go to Disneyland and there would just be a new random Avenger character that never appeared anywhere else. Um, that it's a very interesting idea that they then said, hey, we want anybody to make stories and we'll pay you to make stories about this new random Avenger that doesn't appear in any stories that we've created. We just think he looks cool.
Yeah, totally. I also am getting a little anxious here because, geez, I mean, there's a version of this where the noun NFT is sort of off screen and it's down here, right?
Yeah, it's a very good point. Yeah, very, very good point. Yeah, there's a if we, I think that there's like a few different ways that you could consider building this map out from. If you're talking about where the stories are coming from or what kind of art is being created, you might not want to even have the nouns NFTs on the screen. You might want to have each of the respective types of storytelling, be it films or explainer videos or murals, as ways in which the nouns are being built. But if you want to understand where these like quote unquote assets are being generated from and where the money is coming from, then it does feel like the nouns NFTs needs to be central on the map.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of different valid ways to do this. Yeah. Another to kind of sort of summarize the things I'm learning here that I also hadn't really thought of today is okay, let's go to the Disney map. So in order to get Disneyland, like how does this appear on this map?
What do you mean? Tell me.
Well, like somebody, Walt Disney or someone who works for him, like conceives of it and builds it and spends money and constructs it, right? It takes a deliberative effort from the mouse to get all these different things, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so the relationship here is a little different because, well, I mean, yeah, it took, they created this beautiful nouns art and this nouns contract, but to create this actual wizard film, yeah, I guess there was a vote to send by the NFTs to send 28 ETH here, but they didn't, the nouns NFTs themselves didn't really direct anyone to do it. They just voted on someone else's proposal and then someone else did all the work.
For sure. And that's, I think, a really interesting differentiator once more, because the most skeptical and negative perception of the Disney map is that there's no soul behind what's being created. There's no real interest from the creators in making these things. They're doing it specifically to sell you more and more and more. I think that was kind of a big component of like 80s cartoons. I've heard like He-Man, for example. Even though this isn't Disney, this is very much in the we're going to sell kids merch world. Was worked backwards from an action figure. So they had the idea for the action figures they wanted to sell, and I believe sometimes there's a great like documentary on this. They would find like already created molds of the action figures that were laying around, and they would build characters into the cartoon based on what was sort of laying around to be sold. So, like I said, the skeptical perspective of that sees that as very heartless. What's cool about the nouns world is there was nobody saying, guys, what we really need is a story to sell wizards. Somebody had that idea and they wanted to do it and they were excited about doing that. And so it feels like because there isn't this centralized manner of how the stories are being told or a tactical nature behind how we can maximize profits with every story, it allows for people to propose the ideas that they are most excited about and the stories they're most excited about, and then find a way to incorporate the nouns world into it, but not in a way that feels quite as capitalist, to be frank, as the Disney cycle.
Yeah. It's a totally new way of creating this kind of art, isn't it?
Yeah, Yeah, I mean, I certainly don't think that this has really existed in the past in that way, and that's one of the things that I'm excited about creating right now is um, I know that we're switching subjects slightly by me bringing this up, but it's on my mind, which is I made a video about nouns on TikTok. I think it was yesterday, and today I got this very hostile comment saying this is a Web3 scam. He's trying to sell you NFTs. And what I love about nouns is saying, nope, like I don't own a noun. I don't want anybody who's following me to go and spend 30 ETH or whatever the market rate is today on a noun. What I am telling you about is a new method of making art that doesn't require anything from you other than the ability to propose it to a community that's interested in funding it. And that's cool. Like that is an extremely cool thing that you just don't see very often.
Yeah. What? Totally agree with that. What happened with the complaint? Did the video get taken down or?
It's what's so strange. I tweeted about it today is that I have this message in my notifications from TikTok saying we've removed your video because it violated our guidelines. But the video is very much still up, and so I don't know. Maybe it got pulled because of like the complaint, and then somebody reviewed it and then like put it back. I really don't know. But to me, it's a cool opportunity to break that perception and start explaining the story of a more optimistic, more art forward Web3 than what people have been introduced to in the past.
Yeah, yeah, and sort of a Web 2 roadblock there.
That's right, for sure.
Um,
And what was interesting is I explicitly tried to avoid using NFT and Web3 terminology, not to like obfuscate it, but just because I don't think it's necessary. I think that if I say the word NFT on TikTok, people swipe away really fast. And that wasn't what I was trying to convey. I wasn't trying to convey anything about the Web3 nature of nouns. I was just trying to convey the proposal and treasury component of nouns. So yeah, it's very fascinating that even in a video where I went out of my way not to use terminology that freaks people out, I got called out there.
um, totally. And I'm kind of too lazy, I think, to do this again. But coming back to your Explorer grant,
Yeah,
I mean, we could do a similar kind of chart
for
there,
sure.
right?
Yeah,
One thing
totally.
I'm thinking is, man, you're bringing nouns to your audience on these different platforms.
Yeah,
And even when, it's sometimes difficult, like they think it's a scam and you're getting whatever that is, demoted or reported, that kind of distribution you're bringing to nouns just on your own. So you're
yeah.
you're giving them that.
Yeah, for sure. And it's very interesting because, I think this community driven component feels very different from what people have like red flags for in Web 2.0. What I'm saying, I'm not a founder saying this. This isn't coming from a Nouns DAO TikTok account where I'm an employee. It's not even sponsored. I think there's a difference between a grant that lets me explore a space and a contract that asks me to churn out 20 TikTok commercials, and so because of that, because of the decentralized nature, I think the more that people hear about nouns from people that aren't on the team, which is, in itself an interesting concept, right? Like, can we even consider nounders a team? Would nouns ever have an official TikTok account where they're creating official TikToks? Not really. There are so many people who are doing it on their own by using a proposal to fund that work. It's a very different dynamic that changes the feeling and sensation of watching a video or reading an essay about nouns as opposed to say Pepsi, right?
100%.
And
Um,
again, to bring it back to Disney, Disney is one of the only brands that's been able to do that. There are hundreds or thousands of people that are making content about Disney for free every day. There are people that have blogs entirely dedicated to what's happening in the theme parks. There are people that are entirely dedicated to telling you details about what's happening in the new Marvel movie. But the difference between nouns and them that makes nouns so special is Nouns is paying for the work and Disney is not paying for any of that. They have people working for free, essentially, or relying on the money they get from TikTok or blog ads or whatever else to have people do the marketing work for no money. And I have to imagine that that's going to change as time goes on. As more and more creators value their time and energy, it's going to be challenging for people to engender their brand in a way that makes them say, you know what, I do want to have a dedicated space talking about these things. And I want to give all of that money to a corporation that is not employing me in any way or sponsoring me in any way. I think that's a conversation that's going to start playing out over the next 10, 20 years as social media and the dynamics of social media start becoming more apparent to everybody.
Yeah. Absolutely true. And even just kind of thinking about what you said, I mean, I'm sure like if there are people who run a blog on, how to get the most out of Disneyland, and they probably sell ads, right, to get a discounted tickets or hotels, right? I mean, they probably monetize
Yeah,
indirectly, but that's an important distinction because with nouns, you can do that. I could write like a nounish, trip report on flying out to wherever Disneyland and try and sell you flights, but I can also monetize directly by asking nouns to fund it, whereas you don't have that with Disney.
exactly. And I think that's sort of the current sponsor relationship is if you are famous as an influencer, either in general or specifically around Disney material, then maybe you'll get lucky enough to, I don't know, get invited to the Star Wars theme resort thing that they have right now, Galaxy's Edge or whatever it's called. And maybe they'll give you a weekend there for free where they expect you to film everything and then make videos about your experience there. And, that's cool. I think that's kind of nice. But it's also not a guarantee. It's something that they are crossing their fingers and hoping for and can also go away at any minute. This is a slight change in conversation, but I'm a big tech nerd and I've followed Apple for years and years. And it's been really interesting over the last 5 years or so watching the kind of darling children of the Apple ecosystem go from bloggers, who were the ones that would get the iPhone early and write a review about it, to YouTubers, who are now the ones that are getting the iPhone early and writing about it and getting invited to events. And it must be really hurtful for those bloggers that can't make the jump from blogging about things to making YouTube videos about things to no longer have that access. But the access was never guaranteed because they were doing that work for free or they were doing that work for a magazine that was, paying for that work, but they weren't employees of Apple. So they were doing all of this work to spread the brand of Apple, but there was no guarantee that that relationship between them and Apple would continue forward. And, I guess in a way, that's also true for nouns. There's no guarantee that everything that the creator of the Wizard's Hat wants to create will be funded indefinitely forever. But certainly there's a different dynamic. And the fact that the Treasury and the community of nouns said yes and affirmed work and paid for it up front is a way, way, way different dynamic than what we see in the influencer era of social media.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I've seen that described as sort of kind of a Renaissance type thing of like
Yeah.
going from the feudal and kind of the serf relationship to more of a, I don't know, ownership or something. Because also Disney could say, hey, you can't, keep on using our brand and talking about Lion King.
Yeah, for sure.
Whereas
Absolutely.
nouns cannot.
Yeah, an interesting example of that. I'm I'm recognizing as we have this conversation that I have a lot of weird knowledge about Disney. I'm not particularly like a major Disney fan, but apparently their brand has infiltrated my brain more than I understood. But a great example of that is the employees of theme parks at Disney. They often kind of start creating their own social followings for the characters that they have, where they'll create a TikTok, and that TikTok will be about being employed at Disney as somebody who works in Epcot or somebody who plays a certain character. And, I think that's kind of a tenuous, strained thing where I don't necessarily think that Disney wants that. Disney doesn't necessarily want to remind people that it's a human being playing a character in their park. And so I've seen instances where sharing too much has gotten people fired. And that's not great, right? Because it really shows the centralized nature of this, where, it's very clear that they are controlling what can be shared about their characters, even when you're the character. And I don't necessarily see a world in which that comes true in the Nouns ecosystem.
Yep. Well, it literally, I mean, everything is CC0. So there's no
Great point.
recourse. You cannot, Nouns cannot reclaim ownership of any of its IP. It cannot, prevent me from, for example, using the noggles here on this stream. If I said, "Hey, Disney's this horrible company that mistreats everyone," and yada yada yada, they can do something about that. If I slander them or defame them, but Nouns cannot. It just can't.
Yeah, well,
Awesome. We've gone way down this rabbit hole on Disney. And I'm gonna have to think about this more because it's almost like this conversation with you has sort of raised more questions than it's answered for me. Because, yeah, just to summarize again, I mean, I think there's a question of whether this wizard's hat really should kind of be over here off the chart. And then I think there are a bunch more arrows that come down here and they go out to, individual people like you. Like you have been funded by Nouns. I mean, I have too, but you're already on this map, right? I mean, I could go like this, can I?
Yeah, for sure.
And how many? I mean, to me, it just seems like there can be so many more arrows here
Yeah,
than there can ever be here.
totally.
We're so early here. It just seems like this map could theoretically be much bigger. Yeah. Let's see, is there anything else that comes to mind on this kind of these screens, or do you want to bounce over to some other topics?
Yeah, let's bounce over to some other topics. I've written down probably 7 things this last conversation that I would love to turn into videos and essays. So I'm appreciative for this conversation for that alone.
All right. I got to ask you about these espresso.
Perfect. Yeah, let's talk about them. So
what caused you to create this?
yeah, that's a great question. So like I said, started really diving into Web3 at the beginning of 2021 as all of these NFT marketplaces were popping up. And a lot of my friends or like Twitter mutuals at the time were some of the founding artists on Foundation. And so that was really the first thing that I saw is, wait, what are these people doing? They're creating this digital art. Oh, wait, it's going up for auction. Wait, these auctions are selling. Wow, that's so cool that these artist friends of mine made art just because they wanted to and were rewarded for it. And so I knew that I wanted to create something like that myself. And what I recognized at that time is that there was something about this collectible nature of NFTs that made a collection of things that all fit together feel more appropriate than a single one-off piece of art. And I was trying to think about what I had created over time that I personally enjoyed and would like to see as NFTs. And I realized that I had this set of photos that I had been taking where every single time I went to a coffee shop, as I said earlier, I'm a coffee person, I would take this top-down photo of a coffee before I drank it and a coffee after I drank it. And so these coffees pictured here are from all over. They're from New York, they're from, I think, Copenhagen, they're from Florida, they're from California, and I had been doing this for a long time. And these really only lived on my Instagram. And this was something that I've always hated is I'm a photographer. I enjoy taking photographs, but it's really sad to take something that you're really proud of, put it up somewhere like Instagram, get 7 likes, and then it's over. And I recognized that NFTs were a place that honored the art more than a social platform ever could. And so I picked the best coffee photos that I had taken and I uploaded them just to OpenSea. You know, I didn't really know much about how to create a contract at the time. And I listed them all at zero point 0.1 ETH and I logged off. And the next day, or maybe the day after that, they all sold. And it was a really remarkable feeling where I had been a photographer for years. But that feeling of being a photographer was kind of shaky in my mind because, you know, I hadn't sold a photograph. I had posted a lot of photos. I had enjoyed taking photos. I had gotten some photos used in like marketing campaigns and that kind of thing. But I was never somebody who put a photo up for sale and the photo was purchased. And so to me, one of the things that NFTs immediately offer to artists is validation because far and away, having something that you've created purely for art's sake, being bought by somebody, being purchased by a patron is an extremely validating feeling. And so, yeah, these were my first NFTs. They've never gone up for resale. The people that bought them all kept them all. And there's a couple of wallets that have like really exceptional taste in NFTs, and I feel very honored to be amongst some absolute bangers. But yeah, it was a very very cool experience and helped me sort of figure out what works and doesn't work in the NFT ecosystem.
Okay, we're gonna have to stay here because I need
Yeah,
I need to learn more about this.
please.
Uh, and yeah, just when did these go for sale? Do you remember when it was that you put them? Like what
I mean,
time of
it would,
year?
yeah, it would have been very early in 2021. So February, January, something like that.
And how long would you say you thought about it before you decided to post them?
Probably about
Because
a
put it,
week.
so about a week of kind of thinking about, hey, should I do this? Kind of poking around
Yeah.
OpenSea.
Yeah, I think that there is a part of me that recognized that, there was a window of opportunity that was relatively small of this like fervor for NFTs that existed at that time. So, it wasn't something where I wanted to go out and try to create something new. I also felt like part of the validation behind NFTs was providing a platform for art that didn't have a platform in the Web 2.0 era. So I liked being able to repurpose something from the past. And yeah, I mean, I think it just took me a while to think about what really fit and understand the nature and behavior of how NFTs worked, which is what I was trying to figure out. Like I mentioned, a lot of my Twitter mutuals and friends were these founding artists on Foundation, but they were invited there specifically because they had an incredible pedigree as artists, digital artists specifically, and I didn't have that. So yeah, it was something that I knew I would kind of have to do alone to validate if it made sense. And this was what I decided on. And as somebody who to this day takes plenty of coffee photos and posts them to Twitter, including a video I uploaded this morning, it feels appropriate for this to have been my first foray into NFTs.
What did you? What was it like when you first saw that one of them had sold? I mean,
Oh,
you
it
you
felt
post them all up.
yeah,
Take me through that time. Where are you living? Like, what are you checking on your phone? Did you get an email?
yeah, great question. I think that at that time I didn't know that it was really possible to do anything but use a desktop computer to interact with NFTs. I would be curious going back to that time if OpenSea even had like a good mobile version of the website at that time. They might not have. But in any case, yeah, like this was an interesting time in my life. I had just moved to LA in January of 2020 from Northern California. I didn't know anybody. I didn't really have any reason to move there except wanting to be in LA. And then, of course, 1 month in or 2 months into me moving, the entire city and the entire world shuts down because of COVID. So I was stuck in the house for all of 2020 and definitely the beginning of 2021. And a big part of why I started learning about Web3 and caring about it was because I had this time and energy to be looking at a screen a lot and listening to Clubhouse rooms a lot and trying to understand what was going on. And so I remember, I uploaded them, I think at night or in the evening, and I kind of closed the tab. And I believe, I could be misremembering, but I believe that by that next morning, some of them had sold. And Yeah, I mean, I didn't have any ETH. Like, I wasn't somebody that came into this space with a significant amount of assets in my crypto wallet. I had a MetaMask that I put like, the bare minimum of into to mint these, and I think they were even lazy minted, which was the term they were using at the time to say, the person who will buy this will pay the fee to actually put it on chain. So, going from having, who knows what I had, zero point zero 0.03, zero point zero 0.02 ETH to zero point 0.6 ETH, or yeah, 6.6 ETH was a remarkable feeling. And I mean, really, I used that zero point 0.6 ETH to do everything that I've done up until this point. So the patrons who funded these espresso cups allowed me to have the journey that I've had into, 2 years later, where Web3 is my full-time career.
Amazing. Hmm. Um, who's the first person you told when you sold one?
Almost certainly my wife, who I had been bugging about NFTs and picking her brain and talking to her about what I was learning the entire time. And we have like a kind of funny inside joke that we always talk about, which is she is the award-winning photographer in the house. She, like, during her college years, took a photo class on a whim, took a photo out of a car window and put it into an art show, and won like best in show and received a monetary award for that. So the joke had always been, she kind of lorded that over me in a very funny way, saying that she was the real professional photographer. And I finally got to turn the tables and say, now I've done it. Now I've sold multiple photos as NFTs, and made a genuine profit off of this. And she was elated for me. And then I think the sort of initial community that I was starting to understand and know in NFTs, I talked to as well. I kind of tweeted the process. I still have those tweets, and I kind of like revisit it every year on the anniversary of me saying, "Do you know what NFTs are? Yes or no poll." And most of the answers are no. Should I make an NFT? And people being like, "I don't know what that is, but sure." And then me saying, "Okay, I've done it. I've made these things." And yeah, it was really cool to have this moment sort of embedded in Twitter as a journal of my life, cataloging or memorializing those moments.
Yeah. Um, was it, how did it feel to get your Explorer grant? Was that sort of a
Oh,
similar thing or
yeah, totally. It felt so great. So, I've definitely I've been very lucky to work with a lot of really cool Web3 organizations. I've worked with Aave, I've worked with Gitcoin, I've been a part of and continue working with FWB at this point. And it's a really fun thing to have had these touch points into very cool Web3 spaces. But in all of those situations, it's a very clear um, employee type relationship of, hey, here's my background, here's what I think I can offer, here's the work that I'm going to be doing, and then sort of like a very simple KPI metric of, okay, well, now I have these tasks to do and I have to complete them, and I have these things that need to get done and these meetings to attend. And now this is really the first time in my life where I've received a grant. And I think the grant dynamic is really beautiful, because the difference is that somebody wasn't taking a bet on me as an employee. They were taking a bet on me as somebody worth giving money to figure it out on their own. Nobody from the Explorer grants is checking up on me, asking me to increase my output, or giving me notes on the videos that I'm making, or telling me what they really like to see. They're just letting me make things, and betting on the fact that what I make will be a worthwhile experience. So yeah, that feeling is really incredible, because again, just like selling photographs is a validating experience, receiving a grant is a validating experience for artists. I think that there's a huge difference between having to do all of this work of pitching an indie film and receiving funding, and then having all of these producers breathing over your over your shoulder telling you what changes to make, and what I expect the Wizards Hat community, I'm sorry, the Wizards Hat creators felt, which is sort of this carte blanche, do what you want. We think that this is a good use of our money situation. And yeah, I mean, I absolutely feel honored to have had that.
Yeah. What's it like been? Have you worked with Dot at all, or Martin, or who
Yeah,
have you
just a
interacted?
little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. There's been a few moments where we've talked, excuse me, where we've talked over DM or in a Discord, and there's been a Twitter space that they've been doing every week that I attend and kind of give my update for. And as I sort of joined this conversation, I had kind of like an hour-long meeting, just saying like, hey, here's what I'm excited about doing. Here's what I'm thinking about making with Martin. And it was a really good conversation. But again, it has been a no notes situation. What it really has been is a what do you need from us type of dynamic of, right now, one of the things that I'm working on is making a very long video about droposals. And I made a draft of it and realized that I felt like it was missing perspectives from the artists themselves and people from the community that had championed the concept. And so I said, hey, I want to reach out to the people from Ordinary Folk who made the This Is Nouns video. I want to talk with the Wizards Hat team. I want to talk with Gami, who coined the term dropposal. And everyone's been really helpful trying to connect me with those people as quickly as possible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which,
Um,
speaking of, I had a great conversation with Gami yesterday that I'll be including in a video that I'm making right now. What a dude. He really has some beautiful insights into what makes nouns special. And yeah, I was like, man, I really only wanted to talk about droposals, and we talked about so much more. Like that's a great situation to be in.
look forward to it. When's the video coming out?
That's a great question. I still haven't yet to talk with the Wizards Hat team or Ordinary Folks, so I'm trying to figure that out. But I planned on tonight or tomorrow going through the hour or so conversation that we had, and I kind of have to imagine that there's some stuff that he talked about that will prompt another video that I can make in the interim, specifically about kind of the same stuff that we were talking about today. Why nouns being bullish on artists is such a big deal.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to that. Again, you are at Drew Kaufman on Twitter.
That's me.
Um, yeah, a couple more things before we end it. What at Drew Kaufman on Twitter? What's your personal website? Can you plug that again? What's
Yeah,
the
my
URL?
website is drewkaufman.com. No, nothing else needed. I believe that my YouTube is also just Drew Kaufman. TikTok, which is a platform that I'm kind of using to validate ideas. I make like a short 1 minute version. And then if people care about it, then I start making a long form YouTube, is Drew Kaufman underscore, because I'm a boomer and somebody probably younger than me beat me to the Drew Kaufman handle on TikTok. But it's pretty easy to find me. I kind of link everything I make everywhere else if possible.
Love it. Love it. Some of your tweets here as we go through. I, of course,
Yeah.
played Mousetrap as a kid, but I haven't thought
Yeah.
about it in God knows how long, 20 years.
Yeah.
But I saw this and I thought, geez, someone should make a nouns down version of this.
Oh man, a nouns board game would be really cool because I mean, yeah, like it's funny thinking about Mousetrap, Candyland, Clue. Like those are characters that I love to this day because I played with those little pieces in my childhood, and so imagine something like Monopoly where the assets are, instead of a shoe and an iron or whatever, assets from nouns. That would be so, so cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Um, yeah, I also respect. This is from your blog, your main website, A New Frontier. I just think people of our generation who grew up with computers that look like this, before there was really solid, reliable internet
Right.
connection, before it just this Web3 transformation, just to me it hits differently if this was your first kind of computer. And I think a lot of younger people just don't have that perspective.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think of the 90s digital age as such an optimistic one. And like the reference point I always use is Microsoft Encarta, which came as like a CD with this compact Presario that's in this image right now, and it had like this little login animation, and it had like Nelson Mandela talking, and all of these inspirational quotes. And in that time period, it really felt like we were entering this information age that was going to make everybody feel better about the world. And I think that most people engaging with the internet today would say that it's trended in an insanely negative direction. And I hate that. Like, I would love to see the optimism return to the digital world. And I feel like that's why I care about Web3 is because it's a space for optimists, and it's a space for people who are trying to build that back into the web.
100%. Yeah, Drew. Hey, it's been fantastic talking with you.
Yeah, it's just been
Um,
so great. Like I said, I expect to like think back through this conversation and create a bunch of things out of what we've talked about here. So I'm very thankful for you to just give me a platform to talk about nouns for so long.
hey, likewise. It's been really fun to have you here. I I keep coming back to this Disney thing only because I've thought about this Disney model quite a bit. Even before you made your video, there's been a lot of stuff about Disney, but coming down and actually making these arrows and these charts and trying to place, like, what are these things? Are they properties? Are they mediums? Because another thing is we didn't talk at all about prop house. But if you try
Right.
and put prop house on this map, it's sort of an arrow, but it's also like every arrow, or it's sort of a property, but it's kind of a pass through. And maybe we could do a whole other conversation building this out. And I think um, my guess is Disney. It took him a while to get to this, right? Or did he?
Gotta imagine so. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. When you think about, like, what is the nouns ecosystem going to look like when this is built out? I mean, is this kind of map ever going to be done, or are there always going to be new people coming along with a new proposal, with a new property, with a new twist on something? It's sort of like an infinite flywheel in a way that Disney isn't.
Yeah, for sure. I was just kind of looking it up right now, and Steamboat Willie was 1928, I think, and this flywheel or map or whatever you want to call it was 1957. So multiple decades, almost three full decades between the inception of Disney as a brand with characters and this well thought out and orchestrated map of how it works. So Nouns is 2 years old, 1 year old. Like I think that it'll be very interesting to see what these dynamics will look like in 26 years. And I think that we have the ability to use the past as a way to direct the future. And, it doesn't necessarily require 26 years to make something comparable anymore, which is very exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Well, we're going to have to do this again sometime soon, Drew. I
Please.
wish you all the best with your Explore grant. Add Drew Kaufman on Twitter. YouTube, TikTok content coming out soon. A great conversation with Gami, I hear. Um, Thanks again, Drew.
All right. Have a great rest of your evening. And thanks for having me on.
All right, you bet. Bye.
Bye.